AP, 1, 2.
Thank God. Thank God.
Did you sleep?
Not really. Not
Yeah,
really.
me. Yeah, I'm going to
Tossing
sleep
and
after
turning.
this. All right. The news is Nikola Jokic is not devastatingly injured. He will miss a month, which, if you told me that yesterday at the start of the day, I would have been pretty upset. But after last night and the way I saw that big fella go down, I've never seen him go down like that before. Nilo, you're telling me he's only missing a month, and I feel pretty good about it. Nikola Jokic, not diagnosed with anything quite yet, at least a real injury, but it looks like a bone bruise. Nuggets calling it a hyperextended knee. Everything structurally is intact. Jokic avoids the devastating ACL injury that I think we were all fearing and all knew was plausible last night. And the Nuggets championship hopes are alive. And this is maybe just a blimp in the road.
Yeah, initial reaction just when you see it in real time watching the game last night is you kind of hold your breath, you kind of look away and you're like, "Oh my goodness, is this the big one for the big fella?" And thankfully, the news coming out this morning is it doesn't seem that's going to be the case. As you alluded to, Jake, he's going to miss roughly a month, maybe a little bit more give or take. I think the number one priority right now for the Denver Nuggets is not only getting him healthy, but getting this entire roster healthy, and we'll dive into that a little bit later on here, but about as good of news as Nuggets fans could have asked to receive here on this Tuesday morning after what appeared to be a seriously devastating injury for Nikola Jokic. Thankfully, that is not the case. He should return, and the Nuggets should be okay once he's back.
Yeah, I'm not going to take you down the dark alley of thoughts that have gone through my head in the last 16 hours. I mean, it's truly like the meme with the hat man, or like, "Hey son, what are you doing?" Like it's been a rough 16 hours, and I can only think about what was going on in the Nuggets organization because those David Adelman quotes last night were not good. Like those were just straight up devastating, and even missing a month obviously is a devastating injury for the Nuggets hopes, what David Adelman wanted to achieve this year, what the Nuggets wanted to achieve. And seeing a guy go down like that, look, they're human too. They're emotional. They're more emotional than us. They're connected to this, right? Like everything in their lives relies on this. So when they're thinking, hey, this might be, the big one for the big fella, as you said, they're going to overreact a little bit. And, you see in the locker room. And honestly, and there's like 100 different reasons to be glad. But one of the reasons why I'm really glad right now, Anilo, is I'm really glad for Spencer Jones. Like, obviously, he was doing nothing wrong. Like, he was doing zero things wrong. He was trying to make a basketball play, and he runs into the MVP of the league, and it looks like it could be bad. And it was bad, but it wasn't the worst. And this is going to be something that we forget about, hopefully, by the end of the season. And it's not something that, we're saying Spencer Jones' name for years and years and years because this is a kid who's done great. So that was one of the things that went through my head. I was thinking about the contract extension. I was thinking about, the Nuggets having their first round pick, and these are like the light thoughts. These are not the dark thoughts, but I put a lot of this in my article, which is up on denversports.com, because I think it really is important to think about this from a larger perspective as well. Even with it being only a month, the Nuggets do have a first round pick this year. However, they can't trade it. So the Denver Nuggets are likely going to go into the trade deadline on February 5th with 15 games played, maybe 2 or 3 more between their starting 5 this year, 12-3, top 5 offense, top 5 defense when those guys have played. But of course, the Jokic injury is the cherry on top of which has been just bad news now for 6 weeks for the Nuggets. And, I would take, all 4 starters being hurt if it meant Nikola Jokic was healthy, but 4 starters being hurt and Nikola Jokic is one of them. I don't know how they're going to survive this. But the good news is that as of now, on paper, they all are going to be healthy for the playoffs.
Well, I think the mindset, at least the one that I'm taking, is like, I don't really care about this next month. Like, obviously, you want to see the Nuggets win games. You want to see Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, and Cam Johnson all come back. But like, to me, it's about getting this core, these starters, and getting the bench filled out again. healthy for the playoffs, because you and I have talked about it time and time again on this show. I don't really care where the Nuggets end up in the playoff seeding. Obviously, we'd like them to be the 1 seed. That's not going to happen. We'd like for them to have home court advantage for as long as they possibly could. That's in jeopardy right now. But I still truly believe when the Nuggets are fully healthy and ready to go, they can beat any given team, any given place, right? And we've talked about how they're actually been a better road team than they have been at home in recent memory. So I understand that these next few weeks are going to be rough. Obviously, we're going to care about the wins and losses, but I actually don't think it's going to amount to anything long-term for what this Denver Nuggets team could do this season. And the term that we've used on this show is they're buoying their way to wins. Well, now they're like life rafting their way to wins. Like they're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean with the ship sinking, and they've got to wait for the ship to come and pick them up and get them back to shore. So it's a by any means necessary approach at this point for the Denver Nuggets. But thankfully, the silver lining is they should be healthy for the playoffs, which is all that matters for this team.
So the only effects, let's say everyone's healthy for the playoffs, which could happen. The only negative effects this has on them long term are obviously seeding is going to take a hit here. Like that's just a given.
A big hit.
They're I don't think they're a play-in team. I saw the morning show guys talking about them being a play-in team. I think that's ridiculous if you look at the standings. I mean, the play-in teams as of now, Anilo, are Golden State, who's falling apart, Phoenix, who's not good, Memphis, and Portland, and Minnesota is 6th, and Minnesota's not very good this year. Like, I don't think that they're going to fall below 6. I'm going to come back to something in a second. You put a note there because there's something about that 6th seed. But so seeding is going to take a hit here. The other thing is I mentioned the trade deadline. Ben Wallace, as we're calling them, Jonathan Wallace and Ben Tenzer, are not going to have a lot of knowledge about what the Nuggets need at the trade deadline and then in the waiver buyout market, just because this team has not played together a lot. We know that 15th roster spot is likely to be filled out by Spencer Jones. There's a chance they create another roster spot, but they won't have a first-round pick to trade, which is why I mentioned that a minute ago. So it's going to be kind of really hard to maneuver. They do have a second-round pick they can trade, but it's all the way out in 2031. It's kind of really challenging to make any moves with this roster. And that being said, the GM tandem is probably going to have to make a move, and that move is going to be made in the dark rather than with knowledge. Because even if Jokic had stayed healthy, they were going to get Cam Johnson back maybe mid-January. You know, Cam it had just come back, Aaron had just come back, and Christian had come back, and they get maybe like a handful, maybe 7 games of just more knowledge, and they just needed more data. You know, literally 2 minutes after the Jokic injury news comes out, B-Ball Index comes out with the number 1 lineup in the NBA this year. Guess what? It's Nikola Jokic, Cam Johnson, Spencer Jones, Nikola Jokic, and I forget, maybe it's Peyton Watson or something like that. Like, we know this starting lineup is unbeatable almost with Nikola Jokic. We know the defense has taken a massive hit over the last month without Aaron and Christian. Like, we can put on paper logically what we think the Nuggets might need, and these two are very smart basketball guys. I have a lot of respect for both of them. But it's not with the dearth of knowledge that is going to come with having seen these guys play for 50 games. So that's unfortunate. The other impact this is going to have, the Nikola Jokic is likely not going to have a chance to win the MVP this year. There's a chance if he comes back exactly 4 weeks from today, he will actually be eligible still if he only misses like 2 more games the rest of the year. I don't think that is happening, but there's a chance that can happen. You also have a really lucky stretch here, and I say that as you play 19 games between now and February 1st, your first meeting with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Play the Lakers, I think, on like January 26th. You have 19 games. I think only 6 or 7 of them are going to be against playoff teams. So you're not going to sacrifice, and a lot of them are East Coast teams, you're not going to sacrifice a lot of your tiebreakers. So these are kind of the long-term like effects of how this is going to impact the Nuggets when we look back on this in April. All of this is to say, like, holy heck, obviously the injury in itself, the Nuggets dodged a bullet. But like, you look at the machinations of it, like, it's not even that bad. And this is like me coping to the highest extent here, but like, it really isn't that bad.
Yeah, it's definitely that's the copium thought, right? But I think that's the right way to kind of look at it right now. It's just because Nikola Jokic, I think it was Jamal Murray that came out there and said it last night. Essentially, we know that he's the heart and soul of the team, but I think Jamal essentially said as much after the game of like, he's basically what we are, right? He's what we do. And so Jamal has been playing really good basketball. Let's knock on wood that nothing happens to him, because that would just be awful. But the reality of the situation is the Nuggets are between a rock and a hard place right now, right? You're down the 4 starters. You're down the best player in the league. And look, I was texting with you in our text thread when this injury broke. I don't really care about the MVP. Like, I think to me, like, that's cream. That's the cherry on top. I think it would be awesome if Nikola Jokic won another MVP. All I care about is a ring right now for Nikola Jokic in this Denver Nuggets team. And the way that I'm looking at this, in my optimistic point of view, is yes, this injury is terrible. Yes, it's going to stink for the next handful of weeks to watch the Nuggets to a certain extent without their best player and down a handful of starters. But the main prize is still very much in play, which is an NBA championship. So let's get these guys rested. Let's get them healthy. Let's be cautious with Nikola Jokic. I know they're given this reevaluation timeline of 4 weeks. I'm not in a rush to get Nikola Jokic back unless they're losing 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games in a row, which I don't think is going to happen, right? So I like to err on the side of caution. Let's get these guys back and healthy and lock in for the playoffs. That's where I'm at.
I think they're going to be rushing to get Nikola Jokic back.
Well, I think that's a mistake. I mean, I understand why they're going to do that, but if an extra week is the difference between trying to make sure like nothing happens long term to the guy, you take advantage of that.
Yeah, I don't think with a bone bruise you risk anything structural, so that's not going to be the issue. I think it's going to be a pain tolerance thing, and it is a really painful injury. Like, honestly, one of my first thoughts when he got injured last night is I was like, it's actually good news that he's in all that pain, because a ligament snap normally doesn't have that much pain.
True.
It's a bone bruise. That's why Cam went down. It was like that. So this is essentially, at least from what we know right now at the time of recording this podcast, it looks like a lesser degree bone bruise than what Cam Johnson has. So like a better prognosis. Same exact injury as Cam Johnson. So you've got 2 Nuggets going through that. Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown are on the same timetable too. Hopefully both of them are back before the end of this 7-game road trip, which is turning into the road trip from hell already. Nuggets losing twice in the last week. And the first one wasn't part of the road trip on last-second shots that did not go in by Peyton Watson and Jamal Murray. Last night, of course, Nikola Jokic goes down. You mentioned the pathway to the championship in MVP. I'm going to start with the MVP. I care about MVP immensely because it cements Jokic's legacy. The more accolades he, acquires, the more he boosts his case for being the greatest player of all time. Now, as you said, the number one accolade for Nikola Jokic's case as the greatest player of all time is the ring. But there's only been, I think, 3 or 4 guys in NBA history who have gotten 4 MVPs. And that leaves you from the 3 MVP discussion, which is Moses Malone, who's not one of the greatest players of all time, into that stratosphere of you're talking Jordan, you're talking Kareem, you're talking, those big name players. So I care about MVP. It stinks that that's probably not on the table. There's still a chance. I don't need to break it down entirely right now. What I will tell you about the MVP is that we said going into the year at Nilo, one very specific thing on this show, on our preseason podcast. I don't want Nikola, both of us agreed. I don't want Nikola Jokic to play a lick over 30 minutes a game, 33 minutes a game, 65 games on the year. And now he's probably not going to play a lick over 65 games. It'll still be 36 minutes, 37 minutes a game. But in a weird way, we're getting our wish. And again, this is like 100% copium. Jokic hasn't had a month off that wrist injury since he suffered it.
True.
Like, the best 3-point shooter in the league right now, Nikola Jokic, one of them, and one of the best scorers in the history of basketball, has been playing on a bum wrist for like 2 years. And now he's going to get a chance to rest that thing, and his shooting might actually step up a little bit. And the last time Jokic had a significant leg injury was 2017. He missed 7 games because of an ankle injury. That's when he invented the Sombor shuffle, because he was bored and was trying to figure out ways to shoot off his other leg. So, I don't know what's going to happen next. This guy's superhuman. He suffered what looked like a devastating knee injury last night. He's going to be fine. Like, he might find a way to make himself better off of this at this point, like the way things are going with him. Secondarily, on the playoff conversation and the path to a championship, the other thing we said on our preseason podcast is we know Oklahoma City is going to be the 1 seed. I'm not too sure about that. We'll come back to that in a second.
San Antonio's got their number.
Mm-hmm. So that leaves 3 seeds, assuming Oklahoma City is the 1 seed that the Nuggets need to get. 2 or 3, which is what we've been targeting the whole time, preferably 2 because you get the second round at home too. And then there's the 6th seed. And the 6th seed we said on the podcast to open up the season would be completely fine because the 6th seed, you play the 3 seed in the first round, don't have home court, and the winner of that plays the winner of 2 versus 7. You avoid the top seed until the Western Conference Finals. And on top of that, unlike the 7 seed, you're not in the play-in. So 1 or 2, 3, or 6 are the ideal outcomes from this scenario. However, there is a chance now that San Antonio gets the 1 seed, Oklahoma City ends up with the 2 seed, and that's really bad because you want those 2 teams to face each other in the second round. You want Oklahoma City and San Antonio to get 1 and 4, either way around, perfect for the Nuggets, and the Nuggets to avoid that. The only scenario in which this works, which the Nuggets didn't get involved in what I'm talking about, is let's say Oklahoma City and San Antonio get 2-3 and the Nuggets get the 4. I don't know who's getting the 1 seed in that scenario, but basically you want to avoid Oklahoma City and San Antonio for as long as possible and have them be on the other side of the bracket. And from what we know right now, the best hope for that is probably 2, 3, or 6. But San Antonio might end up being a 2 seed in which, you'd end up playing them, in the second round if everything goes right. But we're counting our chickens before we hatch. We're just putting it out in terms of how everything changed. Because Anilo, I hadn't let the thought go through my head until Christmas of the Nuggets have a chance at the 1 seed. But the Nuggets had a chance at the 1 seed the way things went on Christmas. We didn't even break down that game. We can come back to it. But one of my darkest thoughts last night was, damn, I just saw Nikola Jokic at his absolute peak, and now I'm not peaking, and now I'm not going to get to see him play basketball again for a very long time. So, everything shifts. Literally everything shifts in terms of expectation, in terms of goals. But it does leave them in still a really strong place to contend and win a championship this year. It's just going to be a little bit harder. But given what's happened in the last 6 weeks, the fact that they're still going to have all 4 of those guys healthy for the playoffs is just a blessing at this point, because that's all you can hope for.
Yeah, there's multiple ways to get from point A to point B, right? And it's they're not going to be able to take the most direct route at this point with not just the Jokic injury, but all of the injuries that they've had to deal with between Cam, Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, Watson there for a cup of coffee as well. So I think the plan is still very much intact, or the goal is very much intact, rather, of going out there and contending and winning another NBA championship. It's just how you're going to get there is a bit different right now. And look, if we're just going optimistic copium right now, you're happy that, not happy, but you'd rather this injury happen now than in the month of March, right? When you're gearing up for the playoffs and whatnot. So hopefully the Nuggets are getting these injuries out of the way, to use a bit of optimistic thinking. And when they come back, they're locked in and ready to go. And I think right now, you're just going to have to see this Nuggets team go into a bit of survival mode, right? You're down your 4 starters. You're down the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic. But this is why you got the depth that you got, right? Jonas Valanciunas is going to play a huge role moving forward. Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway Jr., Spencer Jones, who, again, if this was an ACL injury, unfortunately, we're not going to think of Spencer Jones in a positive light, fair or unfair. But the reality of the situation is Spencer Jones, despite being a two-way player for this Nuggets team, has been absolutely on fire for this team. I mean, the role that he's been able to grow into and develop into for this Denver Nuggets team this season is something that I didn't even think about when we were sitting there at media day and we're doing our pregame shows. Spencer Jones has been so good for this Denver Nuggets team relative to his expectation entering into the season. So you're going to get a little bit this is why you made the moves that you made in the offseason. I'm not saying the Nuggets are going to go run the table now without these 4 starters, but you feel comfortable that they're going to at least be able to be competitive and shoulder the load while they wait to get these guys back, right? We're expecting Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown hopefully back in the next week or so. You got Cam Johnson a little bit later on after that, and then Jokic follows them. So it's not like they're all going to come back at the same time. You're going to get it in waves, right? Gordon, Brown, these other guys, and we'll just have to see how Denver's able to survive over this next 4 to 6 week stretch.
Jonas Valanciunas last year transitioned from being a starter to a reserve. But in his games as a starter last year, Jonas Valanciunas was really good. The reason why he turned into a reserve last year was because Washington was tanking and wanted to give Alex Sarr a chance. Alex Sarr looks like a very good player. And then he gets traded to back up Domantas Sabonis, who's an all-star at this point in his career. Jonas isn't. But as a starter last year, Jonas Valanciunas was 13 and 11. That is awesome. Like that is like, we're not talking, we're not in the Jokic stratosphere anymore where, 25, 12 and 8 are happening a night. You know what I mean? We're talking about like NBA center production that is capable. And the Nuggets have not had this. Like as a backup, if there was ever a year where they could afford an injury that lasts a month to Nikola Jokic, it's this one because they actually have a backup center and Jonas Valanciunas. So I'm completely fine with him playing for the next month. That being said, Anilo, if Nikola Jokic misses the next 16 games, which he's supposed to be reevaluated in 4 weeks, that's about 16 games, looking at the Nuggets schedule, here is their next 16 games on the schedule. Keep in mind, at the end of this road trip, we both expect Aaron Gordon and Christian Braun to be back. So that's about 4 or 5 games from now. At Toronto tomorrow night, at Cleveland, at Brooklyn, at Philly, at Boston. Then they come home, Atlanta, Milwaukee, at New Orleans, at Dallas, Washington, Charlotte, the Lakers, at Washington, at Milwaukee, at Memphis, and then a home game against Detroit. If Jokic misses 16 games, and if, let's say, they just punt on this road trip and CB and Aaron come back January 9th, what do you expect from the Nuggets over the next 16 or so games?
I think the goal is 8-8. I think you just try to shoot for 500. That's what I think. That's what I think a positive. Like I know that's like not a great record, right? But I think that's like the realistic expectation. I mean, what are they supposed to do without 4 starters? They can't win all these games. I think if you go 500, that's a win.
You're so much more optimistic than me. I have
What
them going 6 and 10, if we're lucky. I mean, I'm banking any win I can get. But here's the weird side angle in all of this. This is the first year Nikola Jokic has ever played with an all-star. It's Jamal Murray.
Yeah, isn't that poetic?
And you know what all-stars are supposed to do? Step up in moments like this. And I'm not saying Jamal has not met the task this year. That's not what I'm saying. He has been fantastic. And everything that happened last night in the second half is completely chalked up to they were just an emotional train wreck. I don't care about that game at all. This is going to help Jamal Murray's all-star candidacy because he is about to put up 40 shots a night for the next 2-3 weeks. And Jamal has a chance here to just absolutely solidify the fact that he is an all-star this year, which I believe he is. Obviously, no one cares in the grand scheme of things that Jamal's an all-star relative to Jokic being hurt. But Jamal can just do this now. And that is something that's been meaningful to him and meaningful in Nuggets Nation for a while. And Jokic will be healthy enough in time where we get that awesome moment that we're all going to think back on where Jokic and Murray are together in the pick and roll for Team World in the All-Star game, which I think is going to be really cool for Denver sports fans, even though none of us actually care about the All-Star game. Like that is going to be cool in some way. Like we'll all have that picture up of the two of them together, the same way we all have the picture of Forsberg and Sakic in the face-off circle, 2001 Ball Arena for World versus USA, right? Like there is something to be said about that. So Jamal Murray has a better chance of making the All-Star game now because the numbers are just going to inflate. I just hope that the burden on Jamal Murray isn't too much over the next month because you always worry with him in the legs. Like you just do. And even last night, he was hobbling a little bit. That's just how he is. He hobbles and he plays through it and he gets better sometimes when he's hurt. It's ridiculous. But that was one of my worries here, Anilo, quite honestly, when Cam Johnson went down, is just the burden that was going to be placed on Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. They've already been playing exceptionally well. Then Cam goes down, and they've just had such a high usage rate. I'm not going to say that that had any effect on this injury because clearly it was a freak thing. But now you're getting into the territory of, do you punt on all of these games entirely and just make sure Jamal's legs stay healthy through this? I'm not saying they should go 0-15 over the next 15 games. No.
Then you're a lottery, or then you're a play-in team.
You think that, but that's not necessarily true. Last year, the Nuggets were a 4 seed. They lost 32 games. If they lost their next 15 in a row, they would have 25 losses, meaning they have 7 losses to spare between February, March, and April and still possibly get home court advantage in the first round. So I'm not going to say that they need to win any of these next 15 games. I'm not even going to say that. Like, I'm not going to say they should shut it down entirely over the next 15 games, but I'm not playing Jamal Murray in back-to-backs over this stretch. I'm
I
not
agree.
stressing out the guys that just came back from injury and back-to-backs. I'm picking my spots that I can get wins. And that means to me, Anilo, unfortunately, this Toronto game I've been looking forward to a month because Toronto is awesome. And shout out my guy, Zach Lowe. Zach Lowe last year traveled to New Orleans to see Jokic. Jokic has a daughter, planned a whole trip, or a son. Zach Lowe planned a whole trip around it. Zach Lowe's been talking about on the Lowe Post, now just the Zach Lowe show, for months that he's been looking forward to this Toronto game to see Jokic play. Not happening. I'm so sorry, Zach Lowe. Just so sorry. So I had this game circled for a month. That's not happening. But like I'm punting on the Toronto game. I'm punting on the Cleveland game. And I'm just going all out against Brooklyn. Like try to get a win there. The Jamal MPJ game. Like, Atlanta's going to be a tough game at home. Milwaukee without Giannis maybe. Giannis has been out of the lineup. Get that one. Washington at home. Charlotte at home. Dallas on the road is winnable, even though Davis has been playing better. Wizards on the road. Milwaukee on the road. Memphis on the road. Detroit at home is when they come back. So there's like 5-6 wins in there. If you just go all out for those games and not focus on these other ones, you can bank a couple wins. And like I'm just pleading at this point for them to just bank a couple wins. Like that's all that matters.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I think the perspective I'm going to take, because obviously I'm going to care about the games until all these guys come back, right? But it's like you kind of go into hibernation mode. It's just like you crawl up into the hole, you have your food, right? Like if you're an animal in the wild or anything like that, and you just survive, right? You try to get a couple of wins here, a couple of wins there, do what you got to do, and then see where you're at when springtime comes and you're able to come out of this hole with your starters back healthy and ready to go. So look, it's going to be ugly. It's probably not going to be very fun. It might be fun. It could be. You never know what's going to happen with this Denver Nuggets team, but I agree with you, man. You've got to prioritize the health now of Jamal Murray. I agree with not playing him on back-to-backs, and you kind of just go out there and let the games play out and see where you're at when these guys are back. I don't think you need to go pedal to the metal necessarily because as we said earlier in the show, the long-term goal of this season is still very much intact despite the short-term outlook of this team being a bit rattled. So we'll see how it goes, man, but it is what
One
it
of
is.
the most fun Nuggets games of the last couple of years was the Reggie Jackson, DeAndre Jordan game in LA.
It's true. It's true.
We're going to get maybe some fun games, some fun upsets. A lot of stress being put on Jamal Murray, as I said, but a lot of stress also being put on Jonas Valanciunas. The one guy I worry about, just because David Adelman has been so blatantly clear about this, I can't have this guy playing 40 minutes a night. And we talked about this on a recent pod of, we saw what happened to Reggie Jackson, who was solid to start a season, and then his legs just wore thin because he was a veteran. The one guy I really worry about is Tim Hardaway Jr. because David Adelman has talked about it. And I'm not starting the narrative. David Adelman has. So this is one of those guys where it's like, even with what I just talked about with Jamal Murray, like if I'm going to be hesitant about anyone, it's Tim Hardaway Jr. Even if it means losing, I'm not extending him past 25 minutes a night. I'm trying to maybe keep him off the bench. Like there's no reason to lose that asset or to lose how awesome he's looked for when you need him in the playoffs, because the Nuggets are going to need that scoring punch. They are going to need those 3-point shots. So, that's where we're at. And
tough.
Anilo, we didn't even get to talk about it, but I saw one of the greatest basketball games of all time in person, Nikola Jokic on Christmas Day. And I'm going to be thinking about that for the next month now because we're not going to see him play in person. But a hell of a taste to leave in my mouth by Nikola on that game. And, to beat the Wolves in overtime despite an epic collapse. I do have some long-term concerns about their clutch play this year, which has been bad. I attribute that to the fact that they have so many new bodies in there and it's been a chemistry thing. But with all that being said, like when are they going to really have time to gel this year? It's going to be February when everyone's going full steam ahead. So you're going to see some really rough clutch time statistics when the Nuggets enter the playoffs. I'm only going to be looking at their clutch time statistics in February and March and April maybe, and hoping that corrects itself and the shorter view is more indicative of where they're at. but there are going to be a lot of weird statistics about this Nuggets team that are going to be hard to base the season off of just because of the amount of injuries they've faced. And it also just makes you remember how lucky the Nuggets have been that they've been mostly healthy the last couple of years.
Yep.
Of course, maybe the Nuggets were robbed of a championship window because of Jamal Murray missing 2 playoff runs. But since then, the Nuggets have been relatively healthy. And the injury bug started last year in the playoffs with Porter, then Gordon, and has continued on into this season where we've only seen the Nuggets starting 5 totally healthy for the first part of one playoff game against LA and then the 15 games to start this year. And that's been it. So it's just been rough. It's been really rough. And I guess thankfully we have Nathan McKinnon and the Avs playing like this, and we can distract ourselves with the Broncos.
Yeah, well, big game for the Broncos coming up on Sunday, although Justin Herbert's not going to play. But we got you covered with all your Denver sports over at denversports.com and on social. So Nuggets fans, hopefully you're also Broncos and Avalanche fans. Try to distract yourself with those teams, as it's going to be pretty ugly over the next month or so for the boys in Denver.
He's Nikola Piro. I'm Jake Shapiro. We both want to wish you a very happy new year. We'll be back next week with a more regular Mile High Hoops schedule, Monday and Thursday at 1 p.m. Mountain Time when we normally go. This week, we weren't even going to do a normal podcast. We found an emergency podcast. Things happen. Everyone's kind of off work, right? So we hope you enjoy your time off, time with your family. We've had an awesome year with you guys on the show. So glad that Anilo joined me on this, and I was not just rambling by myself anymore. Big pickup. And me and him have some really big things coming in 2026. So I want you guys to stick with us. If you like hearing from us, it's good news for you. So we'll be working on that behind the scenes. So anyway, he's Anilo Piro. I'm Jake Shapiro. We'll talk to you soon on the Mile High Hoops podcast.
Peace.